Estulin is one of the only living people who has connections into the Bilderberg group. I get some intel from people on the periphery, but I do not have a source directly inside Bilderberg. But much of what they would cover at Bilderberg previously in secret is now rolled out publicly at Davos each year. Daniel Estulin has written several international bestsellers on the Bilderberg group. He's also written a thinly veiled fiction that, of course, really isn't fiction at a lot of levels. Just like Ian Fleming's James Bond novels were true stories put into a composite. And he now has released a documentary we're going to be telling you about today. He joins us till 30 after, longer if he'd like. He's an author, public speaker, DanielEstulin.com, ESTULIN.com. And his latest book is The Octopus Deception. And he joins us now to break down world government. We've gone from 15 years ago, mainstream media said it didn't exist. Now global government's here. Presidents in Italy are appointed because they're Goldman Sachs presidents. We see leaders appointed in other countries. We are now going into the technocratic era. That, of course, is a statement out of Bilderberg 6-7 years ago and from Davos last year. So really, they're coming out in the open. They're dissolving borders. They're passing global treaties without ratification. The text of the treaties are secret. Things are moving into high gear, and at the bottom of the rat hole is transhumanism, and Daniel will break that down. I want to look at the conflict with Russia. I want to look at what's happening in Europe, what's happening in Greece, standing up to Germany, at least on the surface. Daniel Estulin joins us via video Skype to give us a rundown on the latest unfolding worldwide. He also published his second book, released in 2006, described by Fidel Castro as a fantastic story. Castro wanted to meet him, so he went to Cuba to meet him. Estulin is not a communist, by the way, but I'd meet with Castro if he wanted to meet with it. The point is he's very influential because his analysis is cutting edge. And I happen to know who one of his Bilderberg sources is, by the way, through Hollywood connections. I'll just leave it at that. So I know Estulin's for real, and his intel continues to come out and to be accurate year after year. So he's got the big scoop on where it may be held this year. Is it accurate, as some are saying, that it's going to be in Austria? And a lot more. Daniel, thank you for joining us.
Alex, it's always a great, enormous pleasure for me to be on the show. You and I go way back in 2006. We had together, standing right in front of the Bilderberg Hotel in Canada, Ottawa, when you were arrested, if you remember. Of course you remember.
Yes.
Just before you came to Canada. And so we've been doing this for a long, long time. And of course, Jim Tucker was with us. He's no longer with us, but there's a lot of people out there who are doing what they can to make sure that this story doesn't die. And again, this global awareness, which we were talking about before, on the world stage, people are becoming aware more and more what's going on as a result of technological revolution, internet and everything else out there. It's getting more and more difficult for the global elite to hide their deeds. And as you said, we do have the sources, and I'm very glad you didn't actually give out the source we have through Hollywood, because these are some very, very influential and useful people for our cause.
Well, sure. I mean, of course, I'm not going to get into it, but I wasn't giving out a secret for those that know. But,
no, I know.
Sure, but and that's just one of your sources. But I'm just confirming that some inside baseball for folks out there that know what we're talking about. Daniel, continuing looking at what's happening, why do you think they're coming show out in the open? And then you've got the floor, because I could ask questions, but I want to know what's on your mind, the latest intel you've gotten.
Well, the Bilderberg meeting is being held actually in 2015 in Austria on my Twitter account at Estulin Daniel. I published a couple of months ago a report that I got from my intel sources in the Ministry of the Interior of Austria, who sent me the report saying which dates that everybody in Austria has to be on the lookout. There is no holidays that week. I believe it's from the 9th of, I can't remember exactly the date right now, but it's the beginning of June, and it is being held in Austria, and we have the documents to demonstrate it. As far as what's going on in the world, the globalist elite, the reason actually all this information is coming out right now, Alex, is that the global elite are faced with the reality of seeking to dominate populations that are increasingly becoming self-aware and are developing a global consciousness. Thus, a population being subjected to domination in Africa, for example, has the ability to become aware of a population being subjected to the same forms of domination in the Middle East, in South America, or in Asia, or even in Europe, in Greece, for example. And they can recognize that they're all being dominated by the same global power structures. And that is the key point. Not only is the awakening global in its reach, but also in its nature. It creates within the individual an awareness of the global condition. So it is a global awakening, both in the external environment and also in the internal psychology. And this is something that the elitists, such as the Bilderbergers, the Trilateral Commission, Council for Relations, Pinay Circle, Bohemian Grove, all this, ONGs, Rockefeller Foundations, Carnegie's, Hudson's and Hoover's, they simply, can't deal with it right now because it's a new game. And this new reality in the world comes with the fact, Alex, that the world's population has never been so vast, presents a challenge to elites seeking to dominate people all over the world who are aware and awaken to the realities of social inequality, to war, poverty, exploitation, disrespect, imperialism, and domination. And of course, this directly implies that these populations will be significantly more challenging to control, both economically, politically, socially, psychologically, and also spiritually.
Simply amazing. When I interviewed you for Endgame 8-9 years ago, you talked about at the bottom of the rabbit hole is eugenics, is transhumanism, that they don't need human populations anymore in large numbers. The decision has been made not to build a world where humans go to space and where we have human dignity, but where humans don't have dignity, so that we expect to be basically reclamated, destroyed, phased out. What's the latest intel in that area? What's the latest that happened behind the scenes at Davos? And what's going to be on the agenda, if you know so far, at the coming meeting in a few months there in Austria?
Well, I think, as we've talked about, I think it was 6 or 7 months ago, my last book in the United States is actually called Trans-Evolution, The Coming Age of Human Deconstruction. And in that book, basically, I explain, and you've been following this, and you've been talking about this, I think, longer than anybody in the world. You brought this to people's attention long before I decided to write this book, Trans-Evolution, that, we're living through this greatest paradigm change in the history of the human, planet Earth, of human society. And the changes we're seeing right now, over the very short period of time into the future, are so paramount that they will forever change the very face of humanity. For example, those of us who have children who today are 6, 7, 8 years old, this is, you could pretty much safely say that this is the last 100% human generation of people on the planet Earth. Our grandchildren, they will not be human. They'll be transhuman, they'll be post-human, they'll be man-machines, they'll be cyborgs, they'll be beings who are not totally human as a result of incredible revolution in synthetic biology. So again, we're seeing this change from human to transhuman to post-human, and this change is going to lead to a completely different state of a human being into the very near future. And again, we're talking about progress and technological development, which the elite are using for their own advantage, because again, the point is, if using technology to increase the power of man over nature, that's an amazing thing. It's a positive thing. But if you're using technology to subjugate us a lot more than we already are subjugated, because there's a lot more people, it's a small planet with limited natural resources, so you have 1% against 99%, and for the Rockefellers of this world to eat, most of us have to die. I mean, you've talked about this ad nauseum in your documentaries, and I was honored actually to participate in one of them.
Well, we were honored to have you, Daniel. We're going to talk about your documentary here in a moment and skip this network break because all the time we have with you is so precious. But expanding on that, the way you quantify it in your latest book, which was just excellent research and material, I learned a lot reading it, is we've got to put that out there, that that's the choice. They're building a world to get rid of us where we don't exist. That's the global architecture. That's what the social engineers are going for now. 50 years ago, there was a debate about it. Now that group has taken control. That's why things are moving so quickly. People need to know the future of our world has been decided if we let these people run things. But if the population is aware of their program, then all of this deindustrialization, all of this dehumanization will then make perfect sense, and we can stop it. I mean, Daniel, I don't see how they can get their program if you and I and countless others are exposing it. And like you said, 20 years ago, no one was talking about this. Now, this is becoming very, very mainstream, and I don't see how they're going to sell the idea of something so monstrous.
Well, you know, a great example, and I think, you know, the greatest living example is Detroit. I mean, if you want to talk about deindustrialization, zero growth, demand destruction, all you need to do is look at Detroit. This was the, you know, the engine of economic growth and industrial might in the United States for the past half a century. Today, it looks like something you see in a Will Smith, you know, zombie post-apocalyptic film. And of course, people who live in the United States, who live in Detroit, who live in Michigan, or who live, you know, anywhere, and who are aware of what's going on in Detroit, have to understand that this is a prototype for the globalist elite for the rest of the world. They want the rest of the world, and you've talked about this, I think, again, longer than anybody I know. They want the rest of the world to look like Detroit, London to look like Detroit, Paris to look like Detroit, you know, Moscow to look like Detroit. And if you kind of look at Europe, I mean, Greece already looks like Detroit. Portugal looks like Detroit. In Spain, you have 70% youth under 30 unemployed. Italy, you know, is up in arms. Half of the country, you know, from Rome down, is pretty much unemployed. Anywhere you go, you know, the world is up in arms. South America, Southeast Asia, you know, Canada, you know, Africa. In these places, this is what deindustrialization looks like. And again, if people are wondering why the elite are doing this, progress and development is directly proportional to population density. So if you have progress, you have technological, you know, development and industrial development, you're going to have more wealth, more money, greater families, which means you're going to have more mouths to feed. And so for the Rockefellers of this world to eat, you know, we have to die. It's really that simple. There's simply not enough food. There's enough space for now, but there's not enough food. So which is why on the one hand, what they're doing, and I talk about this in Trans Evolution, and you pointed out to me very well, this is exactly what they're doing. On the one hand, they're destroying the world's economy on purpose, the elite. But on the other hand, they're using their gazillions of their monies to actually invest in this incredible futuristic technology, which will make this divide between their power over the rest of humanity greater than ever.
By the way, we're rolling some background footage of your new film, and I tell you, it looks like better than something you'd see on HBO. The camera work, the research, I cannot wait to see this. Tell us about your new documentary, Daniel, and how soon we can get a copy of it. I'd love to sell it on DVD or Blu-ray once it comes out at my store, but I hope it goes in theaters first. Tell people the name. Tell us all about this incredible documentary on the Bilderberg Group that you produced.
Well, we're in a post-production now. The film comes out at the end of May, beginning of June. We've been at it for about 4 years. It's our production. We've done interviews in 11 countries, Canada, the United States, most of Europe. We've traveled up and down all over the place. The first producer of the documentary was actually wiped out economically, if you believe in conspiracy or coincidence theories, when 3 banks called in loans on the same day, and that's basically bankrupted him. So he actually.
And by the way, I separately know about this, not from you, but I know who the group was. Are we allowed to say who they were, or we shouldn't talk about it?
You can if you want. Exactly.
Was that the guys with the Halcyon group?
No. The Halcyon group. That's the major motion picture.
Yeah, that's the folks that made Terminator. That they also came after them and took them over to stop your film getting made, right?
Yeah, no, these are not the people who are producing the documentary. These are other people in Spain, independent producers, people who.
So this has happened twice, then, if I'm correct.
This happened twice. Once with the major motion picture, and now with the documentary, which is why it took us a bit longer. But it's almost in the post-production stages. I tell you a little anecdote. I sent a letter, an email to Martin Wolf, the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist with the Financial Times, and I asked him for an interview, and I got a reply, and of course we're going to put it in the documentary. He said in the email, "How dare you make a documentary about the Bilderberg Group?" So the documentary is coming out at the beginning of June, end of May. We're in the post-production, and you know, we're very, very close to the finish line. We're going to be over that finish line, and the film is going to be out. Worldwide release. There's a lot of international large film festivals who are very interested. And also Bilderberg has become a household name. The book came out 10 years ago, and now everybody knows about it, and I think this is the time. It's the right time, socially speaking, with all the changes taking place in the world, that people think finally are ready to embrace this concept that you've been talking about for about over a decade. And, you know, I've been talking about it for over a decade.
Well, you've got Nigel Farage in here. You've got just an amazing list of top people in your film. I cannot wait to see this. What's the name of the film?
It's called A True Story of the Bilderberg Group. It's based, obviously, on my book. It's actually the first documentary which is based on a book. Most documentaries, are not based on books. But this one is based